Hey everyone, welcome to the RTS Guided Programming Coaching Call. I'm Mike Tushir, got a good call planned for you guys today. A lot of questions came in, just a lot of stuff going on, I guess. So we're going to get into things fairly quickly here just so we make sure that we have enough time to cover everything. So let me just make sure that everybody can hear me all right. All right, looks like everything's coming through well, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, first up, we have, hang on just one second, let me make sure I've got everything how it's supposed to be. This looks a little bit different. All right, I think we're all set now, so that should do it. That should get us ready to go. So first question up, we're going to start talking about executing the workout. So these are all questions that pertain to proper execution of the training that you're sent. So with that, let's go on and get started. First one up says, when determining a working weight, it says to go to the chart that I provided as a coach, and then go to the rep RPE that the lifter did the last time they did that exercise. Does it matter if this workout, the reps are different? For example, deadlifts, I did 4 reps at a 9 last week. This week I'm doing 5 reps at a 9 for my top set. Would I still utilize the chart to determine my estimated max for today, even if the rep scheme is different? Yes, you definitely would still use that chart, and that's kind of the whole idea. You want to be able to compare training, compare these workouts of differing differing rep schemes and RPE pairings and stuff like that, so that we still get the appropriate weight on the bar every day, no matter what. So that's what the estimated 1 rep max attempts to do. It attempts to normalize the training, regardless of rep range or RPE or anything like that, as best that we can. So yeah, you still should go ahead and utilize that chart. All right, next question says, tomorrow I will have rack pulls. Is it okay if I hook grip up to the single at 8? And then for all the other back off volume work, use straps. I already did that with the primary deadlift earlier this week when there was 44 total reps required. Is that okay to do? Yeah, that's okay. I know a lot of lifters, a lot of hook grip lifters do that. They will hook grip on singles and then use straps for everything else. As long as you're not having a grip problem, I think that's all right. If you get to where there's a problem holding onto the bar, well, that's going to be a problem, and we're going to have to make some changes to develop your grip. But yeah, as long as you're not having a problem with grip, go ahead and go nuts. Now, for all you mixed grip guys, I would recommend that you not use straps, just because that's not as common of a strategy. You don't see mixed grip people typically doing that. Again, it's not wrong in the sense that it's going to cause some sort of bad thing to happen, but very few things are like that. Basically, if you're not having problems with your grip, you have a lot more latitude to do what you want. But the moment that you start having problems with your grip, you really need to focus on holding on to barbells more. That seems to be the only thing that works to any appreciable degree. So yeah, so hopefully that answers that question. Provided there's no grip problem, that's okay. All right, this question says, for the NL sets, is there a specific RPE that we're supposed to be at or stay at as the sets progress? So I want to give a little bit of background on this one, so I'm going to break out my trusty little notepad here. So what we're talking about is something like this. You may have squat with a belt, the requirement to work up to a single at 8, then back off to 80% for triple. And it'll say something like minus 12%. NL equals, let's say, 27. So what that's telling you, and we talked about this, I believe, last week about how to execute a workout that's like this. And if you missed that, you can go to the guided programming forum and search for NL, search for percentage based, and just kind of look through the topics, and I'm sure that you can find it. But the idea is that you work up to your single at 8. Let's say it's 100 for a single at 8. Then you reduce by 12%. So if you drop by 12%, that's going to be 92. No, public math, 88 for a triple. Now that's 88 kilos for a triple in this case. That's going to be about 80% of your 1 rep max. We discussed last week that the way this is set up, it wants you to put a certain percentage of your estimated 1 rep max on the bar. But to get there, you just take whatever you did for the single minus the percentage that's in parentheses, and that gets you there, or at least as close as we need to be. So the question is there a certain RPE that we're targeting for these sets? Do we want to start at a certain RPE or achieve a certain RPE? And the answer to that is not really. The only thing that I'll say is that we don't want the RPE to be exceptionally high. So if you come in here and you start rating them at 6, and then by the time we get to your last set, you're doing, at 8 or even at 7.5 or something along those lines, even if it's higher RPE, maybe even a 9, that's okay. But the only thing that I don't want to see with this, I would really rather not see, you come in here for your first rep set and we're already at 8. And then by the time, because 27 reps doing triples is a lot. We're going to be doing 8 triples, because 8 triples is going to put us at 24 total reps, plus the single will make 25. That gets us as close to 27 as we can get without going over. So if we're talking about doing 8 triples and your first one is an 8 RPE, then it's going to be a real struggle to make it through to the end. And we don't want to see you having to, reach that deep every week. If it happens once or twice, that's okay. But, if it's a pretty consistent experience for you that, every time you do this, we're training at really high RPEs, then that's a problem. You need to bring that up to me. But in my experience, a much more typical experience is going to be, this first set is maybe a 6, maybe if you're having a rough day, it's a 7, but it's somewhere in there. And then by the time you get done, we're talking about 7.5 or 8, somewhere in that range. So hopefully that clears that up. That's what you should expect in terms of RPE. Now, the reason that we don't just recommend those RPEs is because it gets really difficult to judge, what's a 6 versus a 6.5 or a 6.5 versus a 7. Do we want you to work at 88 kilos or 82 kilos or 90 kilos? It's difficult to determine, and it doesn't matter that much. So that's why we just percentage base it off of the single. The single is there, and there's another question about this in a little bit, so we'll come back to the purpose behind the single. But the single is there, and we're already doing it, so we might as well use that to percentage base some things. That way we can get a lot of volume in for a pretty low recovery cost. That's kind of the point. All right, so let me take us back to our pictures here. Okay. Next question. This one's kind of a long one, so I'm going to read this one out to you. This is only my second week, but it looks like the pattern for most prime lifts is to work up to a single at an 8, then drop down and hit the prescribed rep scheme and low drop at 9. Is the single at 8 more just to see where we are at and gauge the other sets, or is it more for a training effect? My main point for asking this is to see if it's okay to leave that out once in a while and just go to the other sets. This would mainly be for deadlifts. Even though a single at 8 is physically pretty easily, it's mentally draining, and the down sets are not nearly as good after. For example, I hit an easy at 8 single with 500 last week, but then 440 for triples did not feel great. This is actually goes really well with the question that we were just going over. So good timing on all of this. So let's kind of take this piece by piece. The first part is the single for a training effect, or are we doing it just to gauge the work? Kind of both. I mean, the real reason that we built it into the program in the beginning is for the training effect. And you'll see that there are singles in your program even when we don't percentage base. So it's not really for gauging the other work. The real reason that it's there at all is for the training effect. Now, what kind of a training effect should we expect from a single at 8? It's only one repetition. It's a single at 8 is not physically that taxing, so what are we expecting? Well, from only doing it once, you maybe don't expect a lot. But doing it week in and week out, you get really comfortable and really skilled at doing those high intensity singles. And that's what we need in order to perfect our craft for competition. So I would like you to not leave those out as much as possible. It could be that maybe due to fiber type distribution or more likely a mental arousal thing, the percentages may not be real great for you. So in the example that you gave, you hit a pretty easy 500 single at 8. And then you said that you dropped to 440 for your triples. And that didn't feel very good. So if you get really psyched for your single, you may smoke it. And it's a single at an 8 RPE because you smoked it, but you had to get into a really psyched mental state to do that. And then it's really difficult to get psyched for 440, much less for all those sets of 440. So we end up really kind of hosing ourselves for the volume work. I know that you sent me some videos, and we'll get those reviewed a little bit later. So we'll be able to tell more if that's the issue, and you'll know if you're having to get really psyched for your singles. That's not really what we're going for. You're going to have to get a little bit psyched, a little bit, but you don't need to go off the handle for it, and it should be something that's fairly sustainable that you could get in this place every week. You're definitely a little more psyched than normal. You're definitely focused, but it's not. The hope is that it's not something that's a totally unattainable place that you're not going to be able to repeat week in and week out. So if that doesn't answer your question, feel free to write back. We'll get it narrowed down a little bit more. And like I said, I know that there's some videos to go with this. We'll check those out in a little bit. Next question says, for high rep sets that have repeats, is it best to undershoot the RPE and get as many as the repeat sets with the same weight as possible, or should we hit the RPE right on and then drop the weight to get the repeat sets? So for example, if I'm doing 10 reps at an 8, maybe I'm able to use the same weight again before the RPE goes up. I think I see what you're getting at. So let me break out the old notepad again, and we'll take a look at this. So just put a little break in here. So in this question, we're talking about the protocol being listed might be 10 reps at 8, or rather it's going to be 6, 10 reps at 7, 10 reps at 8, then plus we'll say 3 down sets, repeat. So what may happen in this case, and what I want you to do is it might be something like this. You go 90 for 10 at 6, 95 for 10 at 7, then 100 for 10 at 8, and then keep going with 100 for 10. But when the RPE starts to go up, then we're going to drop the weight back down. So 95 for 10 at probably 9 again for that last set. So that's really ideal to me. If you get into a situation where that first set, this 100 for 10 at 8 RPE, let's say that's a 7.5 instead. In that case, then that's okay. You'll be able to maintain that output for an additional set or two, but I wouldn't intentionally undershoot, just like I wouldn't intentionally overshoot. The idea is to hit those RPEs as close as you reasonably can. If you're a little bit over, a little bit under, then you're just going to make some adjustments and keep on trucking. All right, if I missed the mark on your question, make sure to just let me know. All right. Okay. All right, picking things up again. That's all of the executing the workout questions. That's actually more execution questions than we've had in quite some time. But keeping things moving on a little bit, the next round up is program modification questions. The first one says, I developed some pain in my left hip flexors near the groin anteriorly. It only hurts when I drive out of the hole with squatting, no pain with deadlifts. I've been doing the ice and motion thing. Should I take a full week off from squatting? It's not a terrible pain, maybe a 3 out of 10 on the last set. Good question. I'm not really, and I say this from time to time, questions like this will come up. I'm not really much of a rehab guy. I have some cursory knowledge for those sorts of things, but without knowing what's going on with your hip, without knowing what the problem is, it's really difficult or even impossible for me to say. I don't really know what the problem is, and I've got limited knowledge in this area as well. So I would recommend, in general, it's a good idea to avoid pain. If your hip hurts locking out a squat, it may be worth a try to take a little bit of time off and see if that helps, see if that makes it feel better. If it doesn't, then I would check with a professional. If you don't want to take a week off, then I would check with a professional now. But that's more or less where I would sit with things. I really want to avoid just medicating and just putting a Band-Aid on it and keep going. So I don't recommend that you just take some Motrin and keep squatting. It's definitely, if it's bad enough that you want to take some Motrin for it, then it's bad enough that you need to get it checked out or get it dealt with in some way. All right, next question says, I'm going on holiday next week, and I know you've previously advised adding 2 sets to everything in this situation, but I don't think I should add 2 sets to my lower body work because of my injury history. Diagnosis of either an SI joint ligament sprain or lumbar disc tear, probably the latter. Especially since the volume has been really high over the last 2 weeks anyway, I'd rather err on the side of caution. Could I add 2 sets to my upper body work though? What do you recommend? There may be some confusion here. When you're coming back from a holiday, I would recommend that you add 2 reps to each set. When we're getting ready to go on holiday, like what you're doing now, I don't think you need to make any changes to the programming. With that said, you need to do what, in any case, even when you come back or in any situation, do what you need to do so that you can train healthy and stay healthy. If I put something in the program that looks bananas and you're thinking, man, this is really gonna irritate my SI or something like that, you don't even need to ask. Just modify it. Do the best you can. I mean, feel free to ask, but don't wait for my response. Don't do something that is going to make an injury worse or cause an injury or anything like that. So under normal conditions, I would say don't change anything before you go on a holiday. When you get back from a holiday, provided it's been a week or two since you've trained it all, it's probably worth adding a little bit of volume, reducing the intensity a bit until you get back on pace with things. Again, we've addressed the vacation piece in the past, probably in more detail and a little bit more carefully. So if that's you, if you're coming up on a vacation or really returning from a vacation and you're curious as to what modifications to make, I recommend that you search the forum and find some of those topics. All right. Before we get into miscellaneous questions, I'm going to pause and answer some of the questions that you guys have asked in the last few minutes. Let me see if I can get all of these, figure out how this interface is going to work for me. Things are a little bit different today, and I'm not quite sure why. Anyway, all right, first question up. This one says, could you please review this bench video for an RPE check? Sure, I can review that. I have some videos to review, so stand by and check out these videos that we'll watch in another minute or two. See if that gets at your question at all. I will come back and review this video when we get to that section of the call. In the future, if you can send these in advance, that helps me out a lot because I'll be able to prepare for these a little bit more easily. But no worries. I mean, that's kind of part of the fun of you guys being here live, is that you can ask questions as they come up. No worries. All right, we have some miscellaneous questions that we want to get answered. So let's jump into those. This one says, what are the best hip mobility drills for increasing squat depth? That's a good question. Most of the time, well, first to answer the question directly, I'm not really sure, and I'm pretty sure that that's going to depend on what sort of a problem that you're having. Some people are missing squat depth for various different reasons, and that's going to necessitate different types of mobility drills that are going to be needed. With that said, I don't see too many times that hip mobility is the major issue in somebody reaching legal squat depth. It could be just me, but almost all the time it's at least with the lifters that I coach and the populations that I'm reaching, it's almost always a technique issue. If you're off balance, if going deeper is going to result in you falling down with this big weight or falling down at all, then you're not going to be able to go deeper. You need to put yourself in a position where you can reach proper depth with good balance. So I would say that it tends to be a technical issue more than anything else. So if depth is a consistent problem, send in a video and we'll get that reviewed. With that said, I think we have a video for you, so we'll get that reviewed in a few minutes. Next question says, will there be a Team RTS at USAPL Raw Nationals in October? Yes, there will be. There will be an announcement on that forthcoming. Hopefully I can get to that this week, but in fairness, I've been saying that for kind of a while now. So hopefully I'm going to make that, send an email to you guys this week, and we can talk a bit more about how you can be a part of Team RTS at Raw Nationals, what sorts of benefits you get from being on the team, and what we're looking for from team members, things like that. So more information on that forthcoming. But yes, there will be a Team RTS, and yes, I'm super excited about it. It's going to be a really good time. Can't wait for Raw Nationals. It's going to be fun. Next question said, should a lifting platform for powerlifting have the whole top layer covered in rubber matting, or just the sides leaving wood in the middle? You can do it either way. For me personally, my whole platform's covered in rubber just because it was easier that way. It takes a little bit more, I don't know, a little more effort, I guess, to have the rubber inlays on the sides and then have wood in the middle, and whether or not you want raw wood or if you want it finished and things like that. So for me, I just wanted the thing to work, so I covered the whole thing in wood. And it's never an issue of whether I drop the plates or nothing ever happens to it. It's basically invincible since it's all covered in rubber. So that's what I do. That's what I recommend. But if you just like the look of it, with the wood inlay, then go nuts. Yeah, it's definitely not a problem. And the last miscellaneous question: what do you think about switching to hook grip? Just in general, I think for some people, if it's an interest of yours, then go for it. I don't think that it's a requirement. People that have bicep issues, it might be a requirement for you. But I'm clearly a mixed grip deadlifter. I don't really push people toward hook grip. But if you want to try it out, then go for it. It's definitely not a problem. Lots of people hook grip successfully. Now with that said, I know some people who had grip issues, mixed grip, and then switched to hook grip and never have another grip issue. But I know other people who that's not the case. Maybe they have grip issues. They think switching to the hook is going to fix those issues, and it might for a while, but then eventually it doesn't, and eventually the grip needs to be addressed. I know people in both camps. So, the only logical conclusion is that it's a bit based on individual needs, individual preferences, and things like that. So, if you're interested in doing the hook, you've got to commit to it. It's not something that you can just kind of do halfway. You've got to really commit to it, and you've got to stick to it. I played around with the hook for a while, and that's the wrong way to go about it. Playing around with the hook is not the way to go. What I did my first warm-up with the hook grip, and then I would switch back. And then the next week I would do my first 2 warm-ups with the hook and then switch back. And then each week I would try to progress, by adding another set of hook work. I am convinced that process is sound. I don't think that that's exactly the right way to go about it. I think it's too slow, to be honest. And you get to the point where, since you're adding hook grip sets on your warm-ups, you're not really getting a lot of volume with the hook, and you're not getting enough adaptation with the hook, basically. So I'm not really sure. I don't really have a great answer, but you basically have to commit to it. I know I have other friends who have switched over to the hook completely, and they said when they did it, they just did it. They stopped doing any mixed grip work. They, if they could only deadlift, 200 pounds with the hook that day, then that's all they deadlifted, and they totally committed to the hook, and then within a few weeks they were fine. Now, I couldn't do that, and that could be because I wasn't really committed to switching over to the hook. But that's kind of my experience with it, and hopefully that can help you out. All right, I think that's it for our miscellaneous questions. So let's take a look at some of these videos. Got a few different things to look at this week. Make sure that the sound is all set up. So a few different things to look at this week. First video up is Dan's squat. We're going to just check this one out. We'll see what we see. All right, let's watch that again. Let me see if I can pause at the bottom. Okay, this is a pretty good example of what I was talking about earlier. There could be some mobility issues going on, and I'm not sure what the results was for this squat. Dan, I'm not sure if you're here. Yeah, I don't think you're here right now, so you won't be able to tell us. But I'm not sure what the result was of the squat and how that was assessed in the competition. But we were talking a few minutes ago about hip mobility in the squat. So what I'm seeing here, Dan, I'm just going to use you for an example on this. If you wanted to squat deeper, and maybe that's something that you need to do, maybe not, but if you wanted to squat deeper, I'm not sure that it would be a mobility problem. For you, I think it's more of it could be a mobility problem, but maybe not a hip mobility problem. It could be an ankle mobility problem. Basically, you get to the point where, to me, it looks like your weight is a bit forward onto your toes. So how would you bring that back? One way that you could do that, if you widened your stance up a bit, that could help. And it's not really, that wouldn't really help with bringing your weight back. I think by widening your stance up a bit, that's going to reduce the requirement for ankle dorsiflexion. So your ankles have to have a fair amount of mobility. Think of it like stretching your calf. You know, you need to have a fair amount of ankle mobility in order to squat narrowly like you are. That's why a lot of people who are squatting narrowly wear weightlifting shoes, because the elevated heel it kind of creates the effect of greater ankle mobility without actually having to have greater ankle mobility. So maybe squatting with a heeled shoe would make that a little bit easier. Also, widening your stance a bit, and by wider, I mean turn your heel placement would be a little bit wider. And now I mean maybe an inch or two on each side would be plenty. We're not talking about, you know, real drastic changes. And your bar position is already fairly high. That's typically going to be better in terms of hip mobility, but seeing kind of the way your leverages are positioned, I would wonder if a lower bar position would make it easier or not. It probably wouldn't as far as reaching depth, but you know, I've been surprised on some things like this before. My guess is that your high bar position has been kind of developed both through practice and also maybe as a shoulder mobility concession as well. But overall, that's kind of some thoughts that I have about hip mobility, ankle mobility, how it plays into getting greater squat depth and things of that nature. All right, so let's check out this bench press here. We'll be reviewing this bench press for technique. Okay, let's come back and look at your start position. This is more or less your start position. There are a lot of things that I would recommend that you change about this. For one, you seem to be laying rather flat, which flat is not a problem by itself. The problem comes when flat leads to loose, and it looks like you're fairly loose. So when you set up on the bench, a big thing is to maintain tightness. And the reason that tightness is such a big deal it's really a big deal on all the lifts, but especially the bench, it's a big deal because if you don't have tightness, then there's no stability. And if there's no stability, then when your primary movers try to drive the barbell, there's no efficiency. Like there's a lot of force that gets lost in slop. You know, you need to be tight. That gives you a solid base to drive off of, and it makes the lift way more efficient. And that's something that a lot of people say. It's hard to understand the importance of it until you feel it. So what I would recommend that you do When you lay down on the bench, the first thing would be to pinch your shoulder blades together and watch some videos of some good technical benchers and take note of how they set up. So when you lay on the bench, the first thing is to retract your shoulder blades. It's like you're trying to pinch a pencil between your shoulder blades. So retract your shoulder blades, grab a hold of the bar, apply a little bit of pressure to the bar. The bar's still in the rack. Now you're going to want to drive with your feet so that you roll up onto your traps. Basically, you're sticking your belly up into the air. Different people, depending on their mobility, maybe back injury, history, things like that, are going to have different levels of arch. But you want to at least try to get into a moderate arch and push with your legs. I typically recommend bringing your feet back underneath you, back and toward the outsides. That helps to get your knees down so that you can push hard with your legs and keep your butt in contact with the bench. Having your feet straight down is really the easiest way for your butt to lift up off of the bench. So I would recommend modifying your setup so that you get tighter and really so that you get into that retracted shoulder blade sort of position. That's going to help as far as making sure that things are tight and stable. And it's going to feel weird at first. It'll take a while to get used to it, but it's a better way. You'll be better off. So let's start with that. Make those modifications, send in another video. Don't forget to update me on what you've changed and kind of the direction that you're trying to go with things, and we'll continue along. All right, now let's check out the deadlift here. All right, one more time. Okay. Kind of a general theme that I'm seeing throughout your lifting. I'm not sure how much mobility you have in your upper back. Your T-spine mobility may be a bit restricted, which is not uncommon. That happens, but it's something that you might want to work on. I'm not really an authority on how to fix that. I can tell you that in general, foam rolling tends to help, but you're going to want to get the advice of somebody who's has more expertise to bring on an issue like that. But kind of regaining some of that T-spine mobility. You may be a little bit rounded in this video on purpose, but just from what I saw on the squat and the bench, I'm kind of thinking that there's a little theme going on here. So I would recommend that you work on that a little bit. That would help. Maybe not help the deadlift as much as it would help the other two, but I just noticed it here, so it's a point to discuss here. When it comes to deadlift technique in particular, what I notice is that you engage the lats a little bit late. For the most part, this is fine, provided that you're intentionally deadlifting with a rounded back. As long as this is intentional, then everything looks good. The only thing is that you're a little bit late with the lats. And you can see right in here, when you start to pull, you do engage the lats, it's just a little bit late. So what I would like you to do is to do this, to get these lats engaged just a little bit sooner. So I'm going to play the video. Watch right here and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see when the lats kick on. It's right there, right when the hips are already on their way up. So let me back up a little bit more. Just a little bit late. And the reason that you can tell they're late is that you see your butt come up. And to some extent that's going to happen, and that's not a real big deal, but butt coming up plus a late engagement of the lats, you just need to be tighter off the floor. And once you get to where you're tighter off the floor, you're going to smoke a weight like this. It's going to be no issue at all. So last time watching this through, watch for those lats and see if you can see what I'm talking about. Overall, good lifting though. I know that this was a successful meet for you. It was a good meet, good showing. So well done. All right, I'm gonna play a couple more videos. We'll go through these rather quickly. These are just singles, training singles, and we are looking for 8 RPEs. So we'll go through these a little bit quicker. Yes, I would say that looked like an 8 RPE. So onto the bench. Yes, that also looked like an 8 RPE. We'll watch that one more time. I know you're not really looking for technical analysis right here, but I'm going to see if I can stop it on the bottom. I would like to see you touch just a little bit lower and tuck the elbows, or even if you don't touch lower, just tuck the elbows just a bit more. It looks like you're just a little high on the chest. Not a big problem. It may not even be a problem at all, but just something to try. But in terms of RPE, yeah, I mean the bar speed on that was pretty quick, but you can see just technically and based on how you're set up, I think 8 RPE is a good call for that one as well. Yeah, to be honest, I would say that was an 8 RPE. Again, bar speed was good, but just based on what I'm seeing technically, I think, yeah, you probably had another 2 reps. Yeah, we're just a little bit heavier than what I would like to see for an opener. Typically, openers, we like for them to be about 7.5. This looked, if this was your opener, I'd say, okay, that's fine. We're going to be a little bit conservative, maybe not with the second attempt, but definitely with the third. 8 RPE, yes, basically is what I would say. 8 RPE is fine. So good. Good. So let's head back over to our photos. All right, let's finish up with some explanation type questions. This first one's a bit long, so I'll read this one again. In a few months' time, there may come a point where I unfortunately won't be able to afford guided programming anymore. I'll be able to continue using RPE style training as it works perfectly for my lifestyle as opposed to percentage-based programs. When self-programming, what are the key things that I should focus on when designing my routine? Do you still think about volume, intensity, phase blocks, for example? In my current training, I'm doing a lot of variations of the main movement. Is this something that you emphasize during the early stages to build work capacity and then move on into more specificity in the next training cycle? I'm considering buying the seminar DVD. However, I assume that your philosophies when it comes to training have changed since you made this, or do you feel a lot of it still holds true? I appreciate your advice and understanding on this. There's a lot of questions rolled into one. So this basically comes down to, how do you program your own training? To kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit more, we are in development of a course on, oh, and I just remembered that I forgot the other video, the rep video. I'll come back to that in a second, sorry. But back to this question, we're in development of a course that we're basically going to teach this. I did a preliminary run of the course already. It's 10 hours of instruction plus homework and other things like that. So it's definitely not a soundbite type of answer. It's not a 2 or 3 minute type of answer. But basically, the process hasn't really changed a lot since that DVD. It's still a very similar process. We've of course refined it a lot. Now what has changed a lot are the strategies that we use. And that's the thing. So if the process is the machine that turns out a program, the strategy is the ingredients that go into the machine. So you plug in, you start with your strategies, your philosophies, the rules for how you do a thing, how are you going to approach your training. And then the process is the machine that takes that and turns it into an actionable program. Today we're going to squat, we're going to do this many reps at this RPE, and so on. So you can check out that DVD and get some insights on how you go about doing the process. The strategies themselves have definitely evolved. They're going to continue to evolve. The strategies that you settle on and that you really believe in are going to be a little bit different than the strategies that I settle on. Of course, everybody feels like their strategy is the right one, otherwise you wouldn't settle on it, and that's fine. So I guess in terms of some specifics, do we gradually become less specific as the lifter develops, or excuse me, more specific as the lifter develops? We do a little bit, but that's really more of like a months and years sort of evolution. But yeah, these are all like strategy sorts of questions, and we can have interesting discussions on what strategies are you using now and who are they for and things like that. For example, one thing that's getting to be a lot more popular now, and I kind of think this is going to be the next sort of fad program, are these high volume programs, really high volume programs, a little bit less frequency than what we've seen in the past, and low RPEs, 6s and 7s with moderate to high reps and stuff like that. So basically, really high volume stuff, more bodybuilding kind of programming. I think we'll see that sort of make a comeback. The last fad that we saw was all the Bulgarian stuff. Everybody was going really hard on Bulgarian for a long time, or not a long time, but for a couple years. It got more and more popular, but now it seems like it's fading in popularity. And to be honest, the strategy itself is just as effective as it always was. Whatever your beliefs on that might be, but these sorts of strategies kind of come and go in popularity. What you want to do is you want to get to a point where you're understanding how these components affect a person, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally as well. And that's going to let you sort of move past the fad strategy sort of thing and get more into strategies that really resonate with your personal philosophy. And hopefully it lets you converge on an effective solution. So I'm not really sure that answered your question, but we talked for a while about training strategies, and I think that that's something that's important. So hopefully you get something out of that. Next question says, what's the reason for the 600 tempo squats? The reason for those are that we're trying to, part of the strategy, again, tying this back, part of the strategy that we're using in this particular stage of training is to accentuate some eccentric training. We want to emphasize some eccentric strength. Given the equipment situation for a lot of our lifters, we opt for 600 tempo squats. So that's a 6 count on the way down, no pause, explosive concentric. It's just a real slow eccentric for the squat. The reason for that is to accentuate the eccentric. We want to apply a little bit extra stress, a little bit of extra eccentric stress, a little bit longer time under tension. So that's the purpose behind those. And then the last explanation question, I'm 2 weeks out and my program doesn't seem very peaky. Why is that? And it's probably because your idea of peaking is different from mine. With the strategies that we have in place, we see the heaviest weights being handled about 14 to 21 days before competition. We handle our doubles usually at that stage, and it varies based on the group. Some groups have singles a lot. but basically your highest intensity week, your heaviest week, is going to be right there 14 to 21 days out from competition. The reason the intensity goes back down and the volume comes up a little bit in that last real training week right before meet week, the reason for that is that we don't want the volume to drop too much. We don't want the volume to be low for too long. It would be helpful if I got out my notepad for this. So let's make a couple notes here. So if this is meet week, normal training. This week, week 3 is going to be your highest intensity week. Week 2 here is going to be a little bit lower intensity, but a little bit higher volume. Because if we kept the volume low, then you're going to see a little bit of a detraining effect, especially with the way that these programs are written. There's not a huge overreaching component. There's not, you guys stay fairly well recovered on a program like this. It's just not designed to need a long and drawn out volume reduction. With the level of frequency that you're handling, your recovery rate is pretty fast. So if we kept the volume low, then you would see a little bit of a detraining effect. So we go ahead and increase the volume, and to do that we need to reduce the intensity a little bit, but it makes for a nice peak. So this is my idea of a well-constructed, last month or so before a competition. What you have experienced in the past may be a little bit different, but hear me out on it, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I think the results are going to be good for you. So next week during the meet week, and we've talked about this in some past programs before as well, during the meet week, you can expect that you'll hit your openers, and you'll do some other very low volume training. You'll be well recovered, you'll be fresh. You'll also be used to handling heavy weights when it comes time for your competition. All right, so I missed the video earlier, so let me come back here and see if I can pick up this video. That always happens. Stand by. Let me see if I can get the URL to this video. All right, got the video. So let's go ahead and take a look here and see what we see. Okay, good stuff. So let me just review real quick what the question was on this. Let's see, you rated that an RPE 9. Yeah, I would not disagree with an RPE 9. I think one more for sure, 2 more would have been close. So yeah, I mean, for me looking at it, I would say 8.5 or 9. And if you say a 9, then I mean, you did it, so you would know better than me. Let's see. We have some other videos here for technique and RPE check. So stand by and let me see if I can get those as well. All right, let's take a look at these real quick. First one up is a squat. Technique-wise, I mean, it's okay to dive bomb them. You look like you get a little bit loose in the bottom. I think you would benefit from slowing down just a little bit. I mean, I'm definitely not telling you to go slow, but just a little bit slower, just so you can maintain that tightness. See if you can see what I mean. RPE wise, I mean, it looked like, I mean, the speed is very good. The speed suggests like a 7, but there are some technical errors and some technical stuff going on that makes me think that it's a little bit harder than it looks. So I'm thinking more like 7.5. Yeah, probably 7.5. Um, if that was your opener, then we would continue with the plan. All right, that one technically looked really clean. Again, I would say 7.5, maybe a bit easier for that one. Okay, so this deadlift is very difficult to judge. Okay, um, it comes off the floor really good, and your bar speed through about 80% of the lift is really high and suggests that it was pretty easy. But then that last bit of lockout is it slows down a lot, and you can see that it's a little bit of an issue. So let me play this again and see if we can get a little closer. All right, one more time. I would say 8, maybe 8.5. It's going to depend a lot on. I've never seen a lift that's heavier than that. So how grindy can you get as a lifter? Uh, that will play a role in this as well. So let me just double back and make sure that I got all of your question answered. All right, I think so. I think that's everything. If I missed something, then let me know. I do have a couple other things that I wanted to go over real quick. Just some kind of if we have time things. I want to show you guys. So if you go to forum.reactivetrainingsystems.com, let's go to the forum. You can see I'm not logged in right now, which is fine, but if you come down here to guided programming, there's the guided programming forum. And I know a lot of you guys are familiar with this already, but I want to show you a couple things. First is this attempt selection sheet. And if you won't be able to download it unless you're logged in, so make sure that you get logged in. But this sheet will help you in determining what your attempts should be. We've had some questions lately about attempts and things like that come in. So make sure that you check that sheet out, get your attempt selection stuff put through that sheet. It'll help you figure out what your warm-ups need to be, how to time your warm-ups at a competition, how to select your attempts, and a lot of really useful information. So check that out. The other thing is just to go over again how to search the forum. So once you're here, once you're in forum guided programming, you can search the forum. If you just click on search the forum, a little search box will pop up and you can type something in. For example, let's say technique. If you're looking for threads on technique, then if you click search, it will bring up everything that has a subject line with technique in the subject line. So if you're looking for, let's say, attempt selection, let's go back. Let's look at attempts. You get an error because I didn't plan that through very well. But I think you get the idea. You can type some things into the search box, and that will help you find various topics in the forum, and that'll link directly to past coaching calls where we've handled those topics. So hopefully that will help you guys find some information, and you won't have to wait until the next coaching call to get some of your questions answered. And then lastly, I want to give you guys a way to know whether or not your competition date is correct. So when you get your emails each week, your programming emails, it says RTS guided programming, and then there's a number in parentheses. That number corresponds to the date of the program that you're running. So in this example, 10/11, that's October 11th. So if you had maybe 11/07, you know that your programming is for November 7th. And you can get an idea for what your program is targeting on that, using that. If your actual competition date is within, plus or minus 2 or 3 days from that date, then you're going to be just fine. The meet week will adapt and it'll adjust to fit and all that stuff, and you'll be able to peak it for your exact contest date, no problem. If it's off by a week or something like that, or more than a week, make sure to let me know. At this point, everybody's program should be it should be either to the default date, which right now, if you don't have a meet in the works, your program should be for October 11th. If you do have a meet in the works, then that will be reflected in next week's training. It may not have been up to date for last week's training. Not that the program was wrong, it's just that number needed to be updated. So if your number is still out of date, let me know, because I'll have to go back and manually fix those. But there you go. So now it should help remove a little ambiguity in terms of knowing what your peaking date is set for. All right, so just checking my questions here. We did have one more question come in, so let me go back and check that out real quick. Nope, I was mistaken. No additional questions came in. So before we wrap things up, I just want to tell you guys, I got this email, just a progress update email. One of our lifters entered a bench-only comp on short notice, just kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing. Didn't really alter any training, just kind of swapped some days around, didn't really do any peaking for it, but still managed to make all of his Plan A attempts, hit a 5-pound PR, and he said it was 9.5 RPE, so fairly easy. So that's really awesome. Good job. We're definitely not opposed to you doing that. If a competition comes up, you want to hit it, then go for it. Obviously, you guys all know enough to do that intelligently. If you're having the biggest meet of your life in 2 or 3 weeks, don't compete this weekend. But I think that goes without saying. If you're in a situation you want to jump in and do a meet, go ahead, do a meet. Try to get all your planned training in, and don't go nuts with your attempts, but get a PR if it's there. Good job, good work again to all of you guys. Just want to remind you one last time, as always, take what's there, build some momentum. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next week.